Reais.
Ja.
Now mute.
Oh, you don't.
Hey, cuckoo. You made a fuchi kaka. That's all.
but it doesn't fit in your bed.
Susanna, please stop unmuting yourself. We can hear your background.
Oh, but I need.
Hey, everybody, the presentation looks like it's gonna start in about 7 minutes.
Thanks, Daryl. I'm just making a few last minute changes to the slide deck.
Right on.
I'm making you co-host, Daryl.
No good deed goes unpunished.
Exactly. We're going to go ahead and get started in about 7 minutes. I usually like to give everybody just a couple extra minutes after the top of the hour to figure out how to update Zoom and get in. So we'll get started shortly. Good evening, everyone. We'll give everybody a couple more minutes to get in. A lot of people like to join right at the top of the hour and then realize that they have to update Zoom and it takes them a few minutes to get in. So give everybody a chance to join and then we'll get started. This is being recorded and it is being live streamed to our YouTube channel. So if you want to check it after, you can go to YouTube, search for LAFD CERT coordinators, and under our live section, you'll find this replay available. All right, thank you everyone for joining us tonight. My name, let's go ahead and the next slide. My name is Patrick Watts Forbes. I am the LAFD Community Emergency Response Team Coordinator for Central Bureau. And tonight's topic is on earthquakes, what you need to know about them. What we're going to be discussing tonight is not the science behind earthquakes. I'm not trying to educate you in that way. What I want to give you is a quick and dirty what you need to know about earthquakes, and more importantly, what you can do to get prepared for them and what you can do before and after the earthquake so that you can recover the fastest from them. This is part of our continuing education training. We put these on every third Wednesday of the month, and we've been doing that since COVID began, actually. And so we welcome people from all around the country as well as from other countries. We regularly have people from Chile and Argentina and a few other countries out there. If you look in the chat, we have people from Florida, Georgia, and probably from Washington and a few other places all around the country. So thank you very much for the people attending, especially on the East Coast, where it is considerably later than it is here on the West Coast. So thank you very much. This is streamed on our YouTube channel, and You will. Okay. Daryl, can you stop requesting things? It is popping up on my screen here.
I'm not requesting anything. I'm just sitting here.
It's saying that you're requesting meeting summary with AI companion and
Yeah.
requesting meeting questions.
That's not me, my friend. I'm literally on my cell phone.
Okay, well, that is great because technology, as we'll discuss, is wonderful. It works. It's great when it works, and then it is absolutely horrible when you're dependent upon it and it is not working correctly. So,
No worries. Since we're still waiting for folks a little bit, I will just drop out, see if I can fix that if it is indeed coming from my phone.
it stopped. So I think you're good for now.
Oh, alrighty then.
All right, we'll go ahead and get started. One of the things that I think a lot of us, especially if we've been living in a place for a long time, is that we don't realize that there's a whole world outside of where we live. And the simple fact is that disasters occur all around the globe daily. You have earthquakes, you have floods, you have tornadoes, you have typhoons, you have droughts, you have volcanoes. Pretty much every kind of disaster is happening somewhere around the globe. Of course, those of us who live in the United States, we kind of really think about the United States, but um, the other side of the globe, the southern hemisphere, is actually the opposite of us. It's summer here, it's winter in the south. So while we might think, oh, we have a heat wave coming, they're dealing with sub-degree temperatures. So it is a very diverse planet, and if you want to find a disaster somewhere, you can find it for sure. One thing that we have noticed, however, is that natural disasters are actually becoming more frequent and more severe. Now, we don't know if this is necessarily um, just a short-term trend and it will go away. The science is pretty clear that global warming, the increase in the temperature of the globe on an ever increasing basis is actually causing more severe weather. And it isn't so much what we call global warming, but climate change in general. Just a few degrees difference in the temperature can cause actually much worse winters, which is interesting. Much worse monsoon seasons, much greater rain. And those, of course, lead to flooding and hurricanes that are much more significant and much worse than we're used to seeing. If you live in Los Angeles, however, aside from the fires, we've actually been very lucky. The last regional disaster in the Los Angeles region was the 1938 flood. For those of us who were here for Northridge, we might think of that as a regional disaster, but that was really localized. Northridge really hit the valley, it really hit the the west side of the city. But if you lived on the eastern part of LA City, you lived in southern part of LA City, in San Pedro, or even outside of LA City, Long Beach, Pasadena, Azusa, just on the outskirts, that earthquake was bad, but it wasn't a disaster. Now, we also have a benefit of having a completely professional fire department here. At any given time, there are 1,000 firefighters on duty in the city of Los Angeles, and we have mutual aid. So if our resources get overwhelmed, if our firefighters encounter a greater structure fire, and they need more resources, LA County, neighboring cities, EMS from other places will be coming. And that is great. But when we start talking about what a regional disaster is going to look like, an earthquake that's going to affect everywhere from the Salton Sea up to Bakersfield, the mutual aid is not going to be as readily available. And so we really need to start looking at what we have available to us. And that's what we're going to be talking about in a little bit. We like to say that when a disaster occurs, the first responders aren't going to be there as soon as you want them to be. You might call 911 today and when there's not a disaster and get fire department, EMS, police within a few minutes. During a disaster, when you call 911, 911 might ring busy, or you might not be able to reach 911, or they might be taking your information and doing a callback basis. So, really relying on the professionals to be available as quickly as we want them to during a disaster, such as a major earthquake, is not a reality. Unfortunately, because of where LA is situated, FEMA has actually rated Los Angeles County #1 at risk in the United States for disaster. And not only because we are susceptible to most kinds of disasters, really short of a volcano and a hurricane, um, we are not prepared for them because we don't get them. Again, the last regional disaster was the 1938 flood. And there is an apathy that's been developed here. We had over 200 people sign up. I think it was 270 people sign up on the Zoom for this training. There are 88 people currently on. So even people who are interested, they find a way to talk themselves out of getting trained. And that is the reason why LA County is #1 at risk for disaster. We don't get them, and our people are not ready for them, which is terrifying. Hopefully, we'll get over 100 people trickling in the next few minutes, but unfortunately, the reality is that people really don't want to think about this. They would rather hope it never happens than take training and find out what reality is and what they can do about it, which is sad because, as we'll talk about, there's a lot of things you can do to get ready so you are prepared and you don't have to worry about the earthquake. So, one of the big questions that we have is really for those of you who have lived in LA City, you've probably felt several earthquakes this year. And the question is, why are we having so many? The answer is actually interesting. It's not that we are having more earthquakes than we typically do. It's that over the last 20 years, we've actually had less earthquakes than we normally do. We've averaged over the last 20 years about 4.0 or greater earthquakes a year. But if you look over the last 65 years, over the last what historical data that we have, we're averaging closer to 20 4.0 magnitude quakes a year. Sometimes there's bigger shocks, Northridge, for those of you here, San Francisco, Long Beach. Other times it is no more than really maybe a 5.0, 6.0 at the worst. But for the most part, the fours are what get us a little jolted, and that's the extent of it every year. So really, we're kind of seeing 2024 more as a return to normal than an outlier, because people have short-term memories. We just don't remember how many quakes there were, and quite frankly, 20 years ago, I couldn't tell you how many 4.0 or greater earthquakes there were. See, the other question that really comes up a lot is it's people, I think, being hopeful more than any kind of science behind it. And certainly there's a lot of people who say things that there is absolutely no science behind, is they want to believe that every time there's a small jolt, a small shake, it's relieving pressure. And there's simply no scientific proof that that is true. Seismologists are really actually split on if more smaller quakes increase the chance of a bigger quake, or if more smaller quakes decrease the chance of a bigger quake. And unfortunately, we just don't have the science behind it. And we don't even have the history behind it. If you look at history, we have maybe 100, 165, maybe 200 years at the most of data. And the Earth is very old. 200 years is nothing in the span of how long the California coast has been here and the tectonic plates. So we are learning, scientists are constantly discovering new things and learning more about the world that we live in, more about the earthquakes and how they happen, where they happen, and even they're discovering new faults all the time. We simply don't know everything that there is to know. And the great news is, however, that we're learning more every year, every few years. There is greater knowledge and greater technology that makes us be able to predict better, understand better, prepare better. One thing I hear all the time is, oh, it feels like earthquake weather. And I don't know that I'm even getting consistent definitions of what earthquake weather is between the people who say it. I think they just say it just to say it. Um, but there's simply no proof that earthquake weather exists. Earthquakes happen all the time. You can have earthquakes during hot and dry weather. You can have earthquakes in hot, muggy weather, rainy weather. For those of us who remember the hurricane that came through and almost hit us, we had an earthquake while it was torrential downpouring out, and we called it the hurricane. We can have earthquakes during cold weather and snowy weather. There is no such thing as earthquake weather, but again, it goes down to people trying to reinsure themselves that they have control over their environment. So if they say there's such a thing as earthquake weather, this feels like earthquake weather, that makes it more comforting for them if there's really an earthquake that does occur. But there's just nothing that corroborates that at all. And if we look at the largest earthquakes in California, at least that we have documentation of, we can see that they happen all months of the year: January, April, March, November, July, June, October, May. I don't see an August in here, but this is only a small snapshot of it. And what we're looking at is actually the top 10 on the left, worst earthquakes in California, documented history. And for those of you who remember Northridge, that didn't even rank in the top 10. That is number 14. But certainly it was one of the most devastating earthquakes that we experienced here. And that's not to say that something like the San Francisco quake in 1906 was not even more devastating. It certainly was. But as we get into this, we'll discuss what makes an earthquake devastating. And it's really location, 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 time of day, time of day, time of day kind of thing. What I've done is I've highlighted in bold the earthquakes that affected LA County. And you can see that Kern County is kind of on the edge there. But the most significant earthquakes that we've had have not even been in the top 13 that the state has experienced. And then we have a few more quakes that we might have remembered: the Rio Neres quake, Sierra Madre quake, La Habra quake. And those are not even in the top, 15, 16. So as we talk about disasters and what earthquakes are and why they are so scary for us and why we need to make up stories about things like earthquake weather, and the more smaller quakes we have, the more pressure it relieves and reduces the chances of a bigger quake, and the lies that we tell ourselves. Earthquakes are completely unpredictable. We don't know when the next earthquake is going to occur. We don't know where the next earthquake is going to occur. We don't know how bad the next earthquake is going to be. And if we could predict, if we could see, oh, there's a earthquake pattern forming, and it's going to come in the next week. At least we could prepare for it. But if you look at the other parts of the country that get seasonal disasters, you look at hurricane season, the South, the East, you know about blizzards and snowstorms, you know about Tornado Alley. Um, People don't get prepared for that even then. They know it's hurricane season, and when the hurricane is about to hit them, that's when they go to the store and clean it out. So I don't know that we would actually be ready and prepared for an earthquake if we knew that one was coming next week. The other thing is that earthquakes are indiscriminate. They will destroy anything, or they won't. And that's really any kind of natural disaster. You could be in the path of a tornado and it might destroy your neighbor's house and not yours, or it might destroy your house and not your neighbor's. And if you live in a trailer park, you're probably all going to lose your homes. But earthquakes scare people because they can't prepare for them or predict that they're going to happen. And the technology behind building a better, more earthquake proof home simply doesn't exist. But to that fact, you can't build a hurricane proof home either. You can't build a tornado proof home either. You can make it more resistant. And our building codes have improved, but we saw after the San Francisco quake in 1906 that yes, they improved the building codes. And then we didn't have a lot of earthquakes after that. And people complained about, oh, it was so expensive and it costs too much to make it earthquake resistant. We don't know when the earthquake's going to be. So let's loosen up the requirements, loosen up the building codes. And then they got another earthquake. And because they had loosened up the building codes, more homes collapsed and there was more damage. And they did stupid things like putting the debris out into the bay and then building on the unstable ground that they just made new land on. And that, of course, caused subsidence and things to slip into the ocean. So really, there's a lot of things that we could be doing that we're not. And again, it goes back to we haven't had a bad earthquake in 30 years. So what are the chances of another bad earthquake happening in the next 30 years? And to their credit, the seismologists aren't really helping because they're saying, yeah, there's a good chance we're going to have a big quake in the next 20 to 200 years. Well, none of us are going to be alive in 200 years, so it might not be our problem, but it could be tomorrow. And most of us, if not all of us, hopefully, are going to be alive tomorrow. And then we get into the unknowns. How bad is that quake going to be? Will I die? Will it destroy my home? How long will it take to recover? And that overwhelms people. These kinds of questions, they don't want to think about it. When we do outreach and we talk to people and ask them these questions, a lot of times they want to get away from us as quickly as possible because they just don't want to think about it. Now, the good news is, well, I'll get to the good news shortly, but let's talk about what makes a bad quake. Quite frankly, it's the amount of shaking. The more shaking, the worse the quake is, the greater the magnitude is. But it's more than that because you could have a big jolt that's very violent and not cause much damage. Now, you spread that over minutes, and that amount of shaking will definitely cause some damage. So it's really the amount of shaking times the duration of it. Now, we had a drill in South LA on Saturday, and I asked this question: how long was the Northridge quake? And nobody could give me an answer, but I like the one that somebody shouted out, which was a long time. Yeah, it felt like a long time if you were in it, for sure. But what is a long time? The Northridge quake lasted about 8 seconds, and there's some varying numbers on that, anywhere between 5 and 15, maybe 20 seconds at the most. if you think about that, 20 seconds is not a long time. The Ridgecrest quake, on the other hand, was a minute long. You start looking at the quakes that have hit Japan, and you're into the multiple minutes, 2 to 5 minutes. If Northridge went on for that amount of time, the amount of devastation that we would have experienced would have been far worse than what we got for 8 seconds of shaking. And it also depends on the distance from the epicenter. I live close to the El Sereno quakes that we got several months ago. And I missed most of them, fortunately. However, one of them woke me up, and it felt much worse than a 4.0 earthquake. It felt like it could have been the big one because I was practically right on top of it. And the depth of the epicenter is also important. How deep is this quake? A shallow quake is going to do a lot more damage than and feel a lot worse than a very deep quake. Damage to the infrastructure. If there's no damage or very little damage to the infrastructure, electricity, water, gas, internet, then it's not a bad quake. But the longer the quake is, the greater the shaking, the more likelihood it's going to cause damage to the infrastructure. And certainly if you're, say, a liquor store and you get a good jolt and it sends all your bottles flying around and landing on the ground, the damage to your business is significant for even a relatively small shake. One of the things that we have to worry about being in Los Angeles is tsunamis. If there's a quake off the coast, or if the quake is bad enough to create a tsunami, the coastal communities could definitely be impacted. And certainly people have died in California from tsunamis. And the other thing to factor in is aftershocks. And we really don't think about 30 years ago, the number of aftershocks that we had from Northridge. I know we had a few, I remember them. But if you heard the news after the Ridgecrest quake, they were measuring thousands of aftershocks, and it was like hourly, multiple aftershocks a day that the people living in Ridgecrest experienced. And it was, if you're in an aftershock, you don't know, is this going to be bigger than the last one? 4th of July, we were getting we were doing fire patrol, and we were getting briefed by our captain. And that was the 6.0 or 6 point something quake, 6.7, I think it was, that we felt. And of course, LA didn't experience much of that, no damage. But our captain was going, wow, you guys, you CERT people were thinking that this is it. This is go time. This is all the training that we have, everything that we've been practicing for, and it's nothing. And I said, and they said, beware of aftershocks. And I said, well, this could be a foreshock. And sure enough, the next day, a bigger quake hit Ridgecrest. Now, fortunately, due to the sparse population out there, it didn't kill anybody in Ridgecrest. In fact, to my knowledge, only one person died in the Ridgecrest quake, and that happened to be someone in Nevada working under a car that fell loose and fell on top of them to that quake. But an aftershock could be a foreshock. Every quake has a chance of being followed by something bigger. And I think that's what makes things even more scary, is if we have a 7.0, could there be a 7.5 coming? And certainly that leads into fear and leads into the panic you feel as everything starts to jolt and shake and move again. And if you can imagine this is happening on an hourly basis, it's hard to sleep even. But eventually it will calm down. Hopefully it won't take years. But definitely aftershocks can definitely cause more damage. And That's really actually where the community emergency response team found its story. And we'll talk about that in a little bit. And we're privileged to have the wife of Chief Borden, who is credited as the father of the community emergency response team, on with us tonight. LAFD went down to Mexico after the Mexico quake, and they saw the community coming out, helping each other. Unfortunately, they weren't trained, they weren't prepared, they didn't know how to be safe. And the aftershock the next morning, there were buildings that were damaged, that were in a state of collapse, and they had not finished collapsing yet. And people went into these buildings that were not safe. And the aftershock the next morning caused those buildings to collapse. And unfortunately, a lot of the community rescuers died because of that aftershock. So aftershocks are not a joke. They really can cause more damage than the quake itself even. You can see examples of highways collapsing, buildings collapsing, things. And this isn't, again, to scare you. It's just examples of what can happen out there. But if we can prep our own homes and take precautions, be aware of things that can happen, or be aware of things that might have happened around you that make it safe not to travel. If this road on the left is your only way in and out, you're kind of trapped there. One thing that we used to do, and I've personally tried to move away from this, is we used to talk about how scary the earthquakes are. And we wanted to scare people into getting prepared. And that is not a good technique, because people shut down when they're scared. If you tell somebody, oh, if you don't get prepared, the earthquake's going to kill you, it overwhelms their brain. And not only do they not want to get prepared, they just don't want to talk to you. They don't want to think about it. It is too scary. So what we want to focus on is, while we can't predict the earthquake, we can get prepared for it. If we're prepared for an earthquake, prepared in terms of making sure our home is ready, making sure we've secured things so they don't go flying off the wall, make sure that we have supplies, we have equipment, we have things so that we are going to be safe immediately after the earthquake, and then prepare for the consequences of the earthquake and recovering, then we don't have to fear the earthquake. Statistically, and you've seen the video and you've seen the numbers, there's 4.6 million people in Los Angeles, or something more than 4 million people. 99.999% of the people living in Los Angeles will survive the earthquake. It's the fear of the unknown that makes us scared of the earthquake. And let me restate that. You will survive the earthquake. So there's not a reason to be afraid of it. But there is reason to get prepared for it. One of the things that we really don't talk about in earthquake preparedness is what is disaster recovery. And that is where the challenge is going to be, because again, we're going to survive the earthquake, but we now need to live with the aftermath. The goal of disaster recovery is to return to normal. What we do before, how we get prepared, what we do during. Again, if it's a minute of shaking, that's a long time. How do we keep ourselves safe and uninjured during the shaking? And then what do we do immediately after the earthquake? And how we clean up, be safe, help our neighbors, anticipating aftershocks. That is really going to determine how quickly we can recover from any kind of disaster, especially the expected kind. Communities that prepare and plan together recover faster than those do not. Unfortunately, we have a lot of history with wildfires, and a lot of these communities don't exist anymore. And there are neighborhoods that will get ravaged by the earthquake, and there will neighborhoods that will be relatively spared from the earthquake. We don't know, but if we work together, we plan with our community, we get to know our neighbors, we can move together through it and recover, return to normal faster than the ones that are not prepared and that are not working together. I really want to emphasize that preparedness empowers you to not be afraid. If you're prepared for something, you're anticipating it, or you know it can exist, and you know what you're going to do about it, then you're not going to be afraid of it. So what will happen after the earthquake? I'll be frank, I don't know. Nobody can know. We don't know how bad it's going to be. We don't know how violent it's going to be, how long it's going to be, where it's going to be, where the epicenter is going to be. We don't know how deep it's going to be. We know nothing about the big one, except that it'll probably happen, possibly within our lifetime. Now, based on disasters across the globe, disasters in this country, other earthquakes, other places in the world, we know a few things. In fact, even if we look at Northridge, we know power is going to go out. We know natural gas. A lot of us have automatic shutoffs, which is good because a lot of the fires that were started in the Northridge quake, if they just turned off the gas, or if the gas had turned off on its own, those fires probably would not have started. So we know that natural gas will not be available. If we have water, it will very likely be unsafe to drink. And you're going to probably have to boil the water or treat it in some way. But if you don't have natural gas and you don't have power, boiling that water is going to be difficult. What we didn't have in Northridge is a dependency on cell phones. Today, most of us, if not everyone on this training, has a cell phone. And most of us probably rely on it way more than we think we do. I would say several of us on this training are probably addicted to our cell phones. And I can tell you from experience, I start to get the shakes if I don't have my cell phone with me for a duration. So we don't know what a prolonged cell phone network outage is going to be like. All we know is it's probably going to be pretty bad. ATM machines don't work. If you don't have cash, you won't be able to get cash. And a lot of us don't carry cash, we have credit cards. Well, without power, without internet, stores can't accept credit cards. And so being able to buy stuff is going to be a lot more difficult than it is today after the earthquake. Same thing, we're used to being able to get gas anywhere in the city anytime we want. And a lot of people have a habit of letting that empty light come on before they fill up their gas. One of the things I want to recommend, and this is part of the training, is treat your halfway mark on your gas tank as empty. It starts to get to that, that's when you go fill up. And that way, if you can't get gas now, hopefully you can still get to where you need to go with what you have. Supermarkets are going to be empty. You'll see right after an earthquake, a stampede to the supermarket. And you see this even on hurricanes coming in. All the supplies will get bought out. And what isn't bought out will probably be on the floor. And again, without power, refrigeration, without being able to use credit cards, it's going to be very difficult to buy stuff at the supermarket. And what's worse is that these supermarkets now run on what's called a just-in-time system. They won't be able to restock. They won't be able to get supplies because they expect to have supplies come in as soon as they need them. And so they may only have a couple of days of supplies in there. And as soon as they run out, there simply is no getting more. And if the roads are damaged, people will have problems getting resupply. If the warehouses are damaged, restocking is going to be impossible, at least in the very short term. supplies will come in from outside of the city. Supplies will come in from outside of the region, from other states, from Northern California, but it's going to take a couple of days. And to get to you, it's probably going to take a couple of weeks, especially if you're in a remote area. If you're in Big Bear, good luck. What I highly recommend everybody do, and this is relatively new technology. We did not have this for Northridge. The MyShake app, if you download it, it's from UC Berkeley Seismological Lab. Download it to your smartphone if you don't already have it. Will give you, hopefully give you early warning. It could be anywhere from a couple of seconds, or it could be a couple seconds after the earthquake starts shaking. But it could give you up to a minute of warning. And I've heard that the Malibu quake that happened a couple weeks ago, a lot of people did get that warning, and I've personally seen it. You get a few seconds before that shaking happens, and that could make the difference. If you know that a quake is coming, you can at least prepare yourself. Plan, okay, if this shaking is really bad, I'm going to get under this desk. I'm going to protect myself. It's certainly a lot better than, is that, oh my God, oh no, is this the big one? After the shaking starts. Make sure you turn on all the permissions it asks for, notifications, location in the background. Make sure it doesn't go to sleep. Android phones really like to put things into sleep. Make sure it can run in the foreground. It will actually monitor shaking around you as part of the system, which is pretty cool. Really, thank you. Oh, we're up to 100 now. Thank you for the people who have taken the time out of your night to come to this training. That's step one. Prepare, plan, train, drill, repeat. For those of you who came to the drill or the exercise on Saturday, thank you. For those of you who've been to my drills, thank you. For those of you who will hopefully come to our drills, thank you. It's all part of the process. You need to be prepared for yourself and your family. Make sure your family is prepared, because you can't help your neighbors if you're worried about your family. You can't help your family or your neighbors if you're not prepared yourself. So that preparedness starts with you, but it's really everyone. And if you can just get prepared for yourself and your family, that's really all we ask. So if you can take care of yourself, the first responders don't have to worry about you. The next step, however, get to know your neighbors, organize, start talking about, what are we going to do? How are you preparing? How am I preparing? Share information. The next step after that is take the community emergency response team training. It's free training taught by the fire department in most cities. It is great training. They should teach it in high school. I know they've been trying to, I just don't know where that's going, but everyone should take this training. Everyone took this training, we would be that much better off. If you see a disaster drill and you're invited to attend it, do so. If you can participate, do so. But this isn't a one and done. This isn't a, I took the training, I went to a drill, I am now ready for the earthquake. It is ongoing basis. You have to keep learning, keep training, look at it's perishable skills. It's like first aid. If you don't do it and then you need it years later, are you going to be able to perform the skills? No, you need to keep going and keep doing it. And then look at your plan, look at your preparedness. I have stuff that's 20 years old in my bag when I put it in the closet somewhere, I think. Are the flashlights still good? The battery is still good. I had food in there. Is that safe to eat? You need to constantly be reevaluating and make adjustments. This is a very interesting statistic. As much as we love our firefighters and our professional first responders, statistically, 95% of victims in a disaster will be rescued by community first responders. That's you and your neighbors. If a house collapses in your neighborhood, you're going to be there way before the fire department will. Hopefully, it doesn't happen. You probably won't be able to do too much, but if there's people who are injured and you can treat those injuries before the fire department gets there, hopefully it'll be minutes, could be hours, could be days. We really don't know. But what you do to help your neighbors could be the difference between life and death. So I mentioned the community emergency response team. Yes, it is in person. No, LA City does not offer an online version right now. Thank you all for being online on this one, but the in-person training is important because there's skills that you have to practice that really benefit being there, and it is different being on an online class and an in-person class. Being able to see the instructor and interact in real time with them versus the people who are watching this on YouTube right now and can't ask questions. LA City offers training, probably more training than anywhere else in the country. We have classes that start every odd month: January, March, May, July, September, November. The November classes may start in late October just because of the holidays. It is a commitment. It is 17 and a half hours of training, 7 weeks long, 1 night a week for 2.5 hours a session. But it is completely free, and professional firefighters teach the class. People who this has been their life, doing these kinds of rescues and practicing. LA County also offers training, and those vary a little bit. Sometimes they're 8 weeks, sometimes they're shorter weekend sessions, but the training's available out there if you seek it out. And I highly recommend you do. It is not a waste of time. You will learn a lot. But it's also something, again, it's a perishable skill. It's like getting a fire hose to the face with information. They're going to deluge you with a lot. So one class might not be enough. You're going to forget stuff. So I recommend like first aid classes every 2 years. Take the training again. And that goes for everyone on here that is currently trained. And then go to refreshers, build your skills, practice it. This is a picture that we did. We did a nighttime drill in Mount Washington, and we had the fire department come and relieve the team that was there. It was a great experience. We're hoping to redo some of these trainings and rebuild what we had pre-COVID. I want to emphasize, take care of yourself and your family first. I mentioned it earlier. If you're worried about your family, you're not going to be able to help your neighbors out. This is the reason why on an airplane they say, in the event of cabin decompression, put your mask on first and then help your family. If you don't take care of yourself and something happens to you, you can't help your family. In terms of planning for an emergency or disaster, talk to your family, make a plan. You don't know where you're going to be or where they're going to be in the case of an earthquake. You might be at home, you might be in bed, you might be at work, you might be at school, they might be at school, they might be at a friend's house, you might be out of town. In the case you need to evacuate your home, know where you're going to go, somewhere nearby, that tree on the corner, this park. But have a second location, because there's been times where an entire area gets evacuated or is blocked off. People can't reach it. So somewhere across town that everybody knows to go to in case they can't get home. Have those 2 locations planned out, and everyone goes there as soon as they can and meets there. The out-of-state contact, it came about because with the switch telephone networks with local and long distance, the local switchboard would get overwhelmed and it would be very difficult to make a local call. So, but it would be easier to actually make an out-of-state call so everyone can contact the out-of-state aunt, uncle, friend, grandparent, and they could reach them a lot easier. We still keep this in here because even though that may not be true anymore, it might still be easier to reach someone out of state because the cell phone coverage here is going to be spotty. Calling each other might be difficult, but if you can get a call out, calling someone who is going to collect information and say, yes, I've heard from Sally, I've heard from Jimmy, I've heard from Ted, and they're all safe. And this is where they're going. This is their plan, what they're going to be doing and where they're going to be going. And that way, that out-of-state person becomes your kind of Facebook messenger, or it's that repository of information. Plus, I'm sure they're going to be happy to hear that everyone is safe when they contact them. If you have pets, a lot of us do. The worst fear you might have is that there's a fire in your neighborhood and you're not home, but your pets are. So put up a sign that says, in case of fire, this is how many pets I have. Please rescue them. Keep a card on you. Because what if you get in a car accident and you're unconscious and you live at home alone with a cat and a dog and a bird? You want first responders to go help them before the cat eats the bird and the dog destroys the rest of your house because you're not home. And finally, practice exit drills in the home. At 3:30 in the morning when the earthquake happens and the power goes out and there's utter chaos going on, if it is not safe to be in your home, how do you get out? Are there 2 exits from every room? Is somebody going to go out a window if there's a fire outside their bedroom? These are things to practice and make sure that everybody knows how to get out in case of the worst case scenario. And make sure it's viable. Don't just say, oh yeah, you're going to go out the window from the 2nd floor, but there's no ladder and you're going to hope you don't break your legs as you fall out the window. Make sure that you can open the window. Make sure you can fit through the window. Make sure that you actually practice these, but make sure that if you have young kids at home, that they know that they only practice this with you there. And if there's actually a real emergency, that's the only time. Otherwise, you don't want your 6-year-old practicing this while you're, cooking dinner, and suddenly they're down the street going to the gathering site. This is a lot to ask. It used to be 3 days, but the reality is we're likely going to be without food and water for upwards of 3 weeks, if not a month. And that's a scary thought, but for those of you who live in apartments, it should be absolutely terrifying, because how are you going to store 3 weeks of food and water? I honestly don't have a good answer for you, but it is something you should be thinking about. The rule of thumb is 1 gallon of water per person and pet per day. Remember, Fido and Princess, they're part of our family too. They're people too. But that's a lot of water. If you have a family of 5 with 2 pets, 7 gallons of water per day for 3 weeks. That's a lot of water. Make sure you have food that you don't need to heat. Again, gas, power are going to be out. You can't boil water. You can't heat the food. You can't cook it. It's going to be a problem. Canned food does not need to be heated. It is cooked, and generally has a fairly good shelf life, but you want to make sure that you're cycling it and make sure that you're not forgetting about it for 20 years. Make sure you have a non-electric can opener that can open the cans. Some of them do have the pop tops, but some of them you're going to need a good old-fashioned can opener to get into it. Um, Freeze-dried food is a good option, but understand that you need to add boiling water to heat it. And if you can't boil water, it's very much of a problem, though I hear some people eat ramen straight out of the pack. So to each their own. Meals ready to eat, they come in a couple varieties. Some of them have heater packs. The military ones, some of the civilian ones do not have the heater packs. If you get these meals ready to eat, make sure that you have a way to heat them. They're going to be so much better to eat hot than cold. And the heater packs are pretty cool. You only need a few drops of water, and it starts getting very hot very quickly. Um, Matches, because maybe you do have natural gas still, but you don't have your electric starter. So being able to start that, or you have a barbecue, and the matches are always a good idea to have just in case. Wide mouth water bottles are important because you want to be able to clean the water bottles, but some of the metal ones you can actually boil water in. So you want to be able to have access to that water, and the small mouth ones you can't get too much in too quickly either. Again, if you have a propane grill, make sure you have extra propane. I know some of us will burn our propane down to the end and then go stock up when we need it. But if you have an extra bottle at all times that's full, then at least you have propane when you need it. Camping stoves are also good. Make sure you have fuel for that. And then a lot of people are on medications that they can't go without. Insulin, other things like that, heart medication. Talk to your insurance company about having an extra month worth. A lot of times that will be allowed. You can also sometimes restock or refill your prescription a little bit early. So you can hold a few pills every month until you build up an extra month supply. But again, you're not going to be able to get to the pharmacy when you want to. And they might not have the medication on hand if their supply chain has been cut off. And certainly, how are you going to pay for it and check your insurance? So having that available, and if you do have insulin that needs to be refrigerated or any other kind of medication that needs to be refrigerated, having a cooler with ice or frozen packs in there might make a difference between life and death. There are going to be several kits that you want to build, and we'll talk about them in priority. If the earthquake happens at 3:30 in the morning and you're in bed, you don't have shoes on, and things are going to fly off your walls. And if you're running to go check on your kids who are screaming, you're not going to care that you're stepping on glass as you're running down the hall barefoot. Sturdy shoe, closed-toed shoes should be the most important thing that you have. All of you who like your sandals, cool. The sandals are not the thing to wear during a disaster. Whenever I see, I'll be frank, whenever I see a guy out there wearing sandals, I'm thinking to myself, if there's an earthquake right now, I'm going to have to rescue this guy. The only time I wear sandals or flip-flops is when I'm at the pool or at the beach. I always wear closed-toed shoes. Because if there's something unexpected and I need to do something, I don't want to worry about my flip-flop catching on something and tripping me up. Socks are also important. Extra pairs of socks. Having wet socks is not a fun experience. And certainly don't want to be wearing shoes without socks. Leather gloves, and I know there's vegan people out here who would object to this. However, synthetics, while they're great, melt at a much lower temperature than leather gloves. And if you're dealing with something hot, something that's been touching a fire, a light bulb that's broken, you don't want to touch it with a synthetic glove and have that melt to your skin. A hard hat. And I specify a hard hat here instead of some people have thought about bicycle helmets. Um, a hard hat is designed not to, it's not a helmet. It's not designed to absorb the impact of something. It's designed to deflect it away from your head. If something falls on you and you have a little plastic hard hat that's suspended away from your skull, hopefully whatever hits your head is going to bounce off and slide away from your head and not actually give you a concussion. Because we know things are going to be falling, things are going to be flying across the room, and if we get hit in the head, who knows what's going to happen. It's not going to be good, that's for sure. Pry bar, an emergency tool. If your bedroom door is closed and your house shifts or something falls in front of the door, you might need to pry that door open to get out of your own room. Flashlight with fresh batteries, not in the flashlight. For those of you who have had your kits for 20 years and your flashlights, your batteries have been in the flashlight, you could probably throw the flashlights out. Batteries degrade as soon as they go inside anything, especially the alkaline batteries, and they start to leak. And then sometimes they'll start to swell. And especially, I had a Maglite that was in my center console and checked on it years after it was in there. And of course, we have high temperatures and low temperatures and all sorts of things. Yeah, that flashlight was unusable. And because it was metal, the battery had swelled inside of it and there was no getting the battery out. I did find out that apparently Maglite has a lifetime warranty. I probably could have sent it in. I threw it out. Make sure leave the batteries in their original packaging. If it's rated for 10 years, that's inside the original packaging. If you put in your flashlight to check it, it starts the degradation process immediately. Light sticks are great. They don't need batteries. However, they do have a lifespan. And after a couple of years, the light sticks won't be as bright, if not at all. If you wear eyeglasses or contact lenses, you take your contacts out at night, make sure you have an extra pair of eyeglasses in a container that's going to be crush proof or at least crush resistant. Worst thing you want to be is blind as a bat, fumbling around in the dark. A whistle is really useful because if you're trapped and you need help, you can only yell for so long, but you can blow a whistle for days, weeks, and hopefully someone will hear it and help you out. Two-way radio. We talk about radio a lot. Your cell phone's not going to work. Being able to call someone, talk to your family, even if you're all trapped in your rooms, you're not going to be able to reach each other on your cell phones. But if you all have two-way radios and can call each other within the house, at least you can talk to each other and possibly other people, your neighbors. This is the part that people don't want to think about. You might not be able to flush your toilet. And if you're sheltering at home, things will get stinky. Things will get bad real fast. Without clean running water, disease happens. So you want to take precaution. Everybody has to go to the bathroom at some point. If you're eating meals ready to eat, MREs, or high calorie food, it's not going to be what you're used to. Or even if you're eating canned food, it's not going to be what you're used to. Your digestive system might not be okay with this. So have a plan about what you're going to do. You can buy one of those 5-gallon buckets. You can cut up a pool noodle and make a seat. Definitely want to have trash bags, contractor bags, something in there that you can then seal up, drawstring ones that quickly seal. Cat litter is also good. Cat litter is absorbent and clumps together. For those of you who don't have cats, you might not know this, but it is actually a great thing to have if you need to go to the restroom yourself and you don't have running water. It does not hurt to have plastic sheeting, tarps, contractor bags around, because if your windows have broken or blown out or something, it makes a good quick replacement window. Duct tape will help you seal it. Rope or paracord, you don't know when you're going to need this, but oftentimes you're going to have to tie something up, and having that available is very helpful. I am not a fan of hand sanitizer with alcohol. Alcohol dries out your hands. There are antibacterial hand wipes that I prefer. They're called BZK wipes. They're standard first aid wipes. They don't use alcohol, so they don't sting, but they also the reason why I like the hand wipes over the hand sanitizer lotion is because when you use a hand sanitizer lotion, you don't wash away whatever's on your hands. With the wipes, you can at least get it off your hands. And I prefer those over I actually, the Red Cross says you use hand sanitizer when you can't wash your hands with soap and water. And the Red Cross says that if you use hand sanitizer, you can use it twice, and then you absolutely need to wash your hands with soap and water. Hand wipe, they do make them with soap as well, water-free ones. That at least is a good idea to have just to take care of yourself, because again, your water may not work and certainly is not going to be safe to drink and might not be even safe to wash your hands in. Unscented bleach can be used to purify water. Fun fact, unscented bleach has an expiration date on it too, and it's not that long. So if you think you have unscented bleach that's been sitting in your closet for 20 years that you're going to use to purify your water, I got news for you. Extra toilet paper. Remember at the beginning of COVID when everybody ran out of toilet paper and there were long lines of people at the stores, and the first few people in line bought all the toilet paper? If you've gone camping before or you survived a pandemic, you know that the two things you need are clean drinking water and toilet paper. And you can use the toilet paper to blow your nose if you need to. Maybe don't buy out the store. Most of us will be sheltering at home after the earthquake. So we need a good kit. This is an addition to our under the bed kit. We want to have one flashlight with unused batteries per person, a battery powered lantern, so you don't need to use your flashlights, but you can light up the room, glow sticks, a large first aid kit. And please take training and learn how to use the contents of your first aid kit. It does you no good to have a suture kit in your first aid kit if you don't know how to suture. And same thing, the other stuff in there. If you don't know what it's for, then it does you no good to have it. Take first aid training, take advanced first aid training. Now, you can take EMT training, though EMTs actually don't do much first aid. Emergency medical responder classes, if you can take those are really the best classes you can take because you learn a lot of first aid in that. Have fire extinguishers. A small fire will become a big fire if you can't put it out. And make sure you have more than one fire extinguisher, because there is a small chance your fire extinguisher is not going to work when you need it to. Make sure your fire extinguisher is somewhere where you can get to it. A lot of times people put it all the way inside the room. Well, if there's a fire between you and the fire extinguisher, that fire extinguisher is not something you're going to be able to get to. So generally speaking, at the entrance to the room is probably one of the best places you can have it. If you walk to the room, you smell smoke, you look inside, oh my God, there's a fire. Hey, there's a fire extinguisher right here where you're standing. That's the best place for it, right there where you're standing. The recommendation is to shake up the fire extinguisher a couple times a year, generally speaking. And I heard it both ways, but it's powder, and the powder can cake together, and when you need to use it, it may not actually be powder. It may be a solid brick. So lift up your fire extinguisher, turn it upside down, shake it around. If you have a rubber mallet, pound it a couple times on the bottom. It's not going to hurt your fire extinguisher, but it's going to make sure that it remains powder when you need it. And just do it when you check your batteries in your fire alarms, or every at daylight saving time, when you change your clocks. Two-way radios, we already talked about this. Two-way radios per person in the family. You can communicate. If you're inside, they're outside, they're down the street. When your cell phones don't work, and most of us don't know how to communicate without cell phones nowadays, those family radio service radios, you can buy these at Best Buy, at Costco, at Target, at Walmart, at Amazon. They're license free. You just buy the radios, and they usually come in pairs. If you have kids who rely on technology to keep them entertained, who have a 15-second attention span, you might want to have some games, playing cards, board games, something to. This is probably going to be the first time they've experienced a major earthquake. And if the power's out and everyone is panicking, and you're trying to show brave face for your kids who are trying not to scream in terror about the first time they experienced an earthquake, getting their mind off of it is going to be paramount to your sanity, let alone theirs. I didn't need the second entry here about the radio. Okay. You may need to evacuate your home. Hopefully you don't, because all your stuff is there. But if you do, and you need to get out, and you need to get out fast, a backpack with some extra clothes, an extra pair of closed-toed shoes, comfortable walking shoes, a small first aid kit, sleeping bag, or Mylar blankets. Camping gear is great. If you have camping gear near your exit and you can grab it and go, MREs, food that you're ready to eat out of the pack, water bottle, hydration pack. It may not be safe to fill the water out of your faucet or out of someone's hose. You may need to purify it or filter it before you do that. But water is going to be important, because if you have to walk somewhere, especially if it's 115 degrees out when we have the earthquake, and you live in the valley or Palm Springs or some place that you can't survive without air conditioner, you're going to need that water. Battery bank for phone and other electronics. You may not be able to get cell signal right now, but you may still need that phone for GPS, and having maps downloaded, being able to use that to navigate. And when you do get somewhere where there's finally cell signal, having a working phone is going to be important. So make sure you can keep it charged. Keep copies of your important documents, insurance, medical records, mortgage, registration, things that you prove you own stuff, pictures of your valuables. If you need to make an insurance claim after the fact and you can't prove that you have this stuff, it's going to be very difficult. Keep a copy in a USB drive that is secure, because some of these documents are someone who wants to commit identity thefts a wet dream. Keep it online as well, in case you need to access it and you can't, your USB drive got crushed or something. Emergency money. You're not going to be able to get to the ATM, but make sure they're in small bills. If you need to buy a bottle of water from the kid down the street who raided the Costco, and you hand him a 20 for a $5 bottle of water, I can guarantee they can't break that 20. So you now have to choose, do I really want that $20 bottle of water, or am I going to walk away from this? Ones, fives, tens, no more than 20s, certainly not 50s, $100. If you flash that kind of money around, you might also get robbed. Again, two-way radio. Communication is going to be critical here. Someone mentioned in the comments about swimming pools. Do not drink swimming pool water. There's chemicals in there that will make you sick. The worst thing that you can do during a disaster is be sick, having to go to the restroom, having it come out of both ends. Um, do not drink chemicals. There are filters that claim they can filter out the water from a swimming pool, make it safe to drink. That is not the time to experiment and find out if that really is the case, or worse, it is not the case and your body does not handle that well. Get home kit. Most of us spend a third of our, actually, I think it's what, a third of our lives in the home, a third of our lives at work, a third of our lives in bed, something like that. There's a very good chance you're not going to be at home when the earthquake happens. So you want to get home kit, or you want a kit at work, or both. Have a get home kit in the car, have a work kit at work. Doesn't hurt to have extra if you can afford to. Do not go broke buying a bunch of stuff. Don't put yourself in financial ruin just to have supplies that you may not need in 20 to 200 years. Again, backpack. Backpack makes it very easy to take this stuff with you. Hydration pouch. A lot of the backpacks, tactical packs, hiking packs have spots for a hydration pouch. Water filter. You can add on the water filter to the hose, or you can put the water filter inside when you fill it. Both are options. Just remember which one you're doing so you don't contaminate your water. An extra set of clothes, comfortable shoes. For the women out there who wear high heels to work, strongly recommend you have a pair of comfortable walking shoes in your vehicle, possibly even at your desk, because you might not be able to get to your vehicle. It's happened a lot. Change out of your high heels. Even men with your dress shoes, have a pair of comfortable shoes that you can walk miles in. You'll thank me later if you ever have to do that. A cotton towel or blanket, Mylar blankets in the car. If you have to sleep in your car, if you have to camp on the side of the road, it's going to be nice to have something to wrap yourself in or clean yourself off with. In LA City, we have variable temperature from anywhere from 30 degrees up to 115, 120, 25 degrees. Food does not like hot temperatures. Meals ready to eat are best stored at 70 degrees. Most food will not be able to survive well in 100+ degree temperatures. That's what Coast Guard rations are for. These are designed for lifeboats that experience these kinds of temperature shifts out in the sun. These are safe to keep in your car. There's some places that will even let you try them out. These are very caloric dense, meaning that one small wafer is probably like 2,000 to 5,000 calories. So you don't need a lot of this to have enough calories to keep you going, which is a good thing. But also don't eat the entire wafer if it's 5,000 calories. Water as well. The Mylar packs of water, I want to call them envelopes, but they're just Mylar packs. They also make bricks. They make canned water. They make cardboard bottles of water. Watch out for the life and the expiration dates on them. It's not the water that expires, it's the packaging. If the water's only good for 5 years and it's been 20, I don't know that I would want to drink it because the packaging breaks down, and again, chemicals. I don't want to find out that my body does not agree with that 20-year-old water with all the chemicals in it during a disaster. Small first aid kit. Every pack has a first aid kit. If you cut yourself, you want to take care of that. If you step on something, you want to take care of that, because an untreated injury can get infected and go from something that you can take care of with a first aid kit to something you need to go to the hospital for if it gets infected. not just for you, but for your loved ones, for your neighbors. This is how we can help each other out, taking care of small medical problems before they can become medical emergencies. Tools. Multi-tool's great, but if you need to do something, and this is even day to day, you never know when you need a set of tools. Again, battery bank to charge your phone. Even in our day-to-day lives, how many times have we walked out and our phone's at 30% and we're going to be away from our car for a few hours and we know our cell phone's going to be dead by that time. Having that battery bank, being able to take it and charge it while we're out, you'll thank me later. Emergency money, again, small bills, because you might need to buy something. And again, a two-way radio. I probably carry less than I used to, but in general, unless I'm someplace where I can't, I generally have a flashlight on me. That I can pretty much take everywhere. A pocket knife. It is very difficult to improvise a knife. And it's not a weapon, it is a tool. But if I need to cut something, I need to cut some rope, I need to whittle a stick or something, I need to cut open a package. I always have a blade on me, unless I'm somewhere where I can't. Multi-tool. This I usually carry in a bag that I have with me. Not so much on me, but for those who are more tactical with your tactical pants, you have a lot of pockets. Having multi-tool is great. I have one that I can open one-handed because if I'm holding something and I need to secure a loose nut or something, I might not have the option to use both hands to get that tool open to what I need. Small first aid kit. It's usually in a bag with me. Water bottle, because you never know when you need to fill up some water and drink something. Again, battery bank from my phone. Most of us, a lot of us now don't carry cash on us. I say that for certain people that might be asking for money. But I usually try and keep at least a few dollars on me. That varies a lot though. Again, you do not want to put yourself in financial ruin to get prepared. Buy it over time, buy what you can, what you're comfortable doing. Make sure you don't let it go to waste. If you have extra food in your closet, cycle it out. If you have canned food that you like, that your family likes, that your kids like, have some extra of it. Just make sure you cycle it back in and restock. This is the American Red Cross 20 weeks to prepare. It's buying over 21 weeks, a couple items or a few items a week. If you follow this guide, you're probably going to be in pretty good shape. I'm sure the numbers on here, 175 for radio weather, I don't know that that's valid anymore, but you can find this online. Just search for American Red Cross 21 weeks to prepare. There's also a Spanish version of this as well. Want to go back to getting to know your neighbors, and the community that prepares together, survives together, recovers faster. Community is continuity. There's a lot of terminology out there that mean different things to different people. So for the sake of this, when I talk about neighborhood blocks, I'm talking about 10 to 25 households, generally homes on a street. My neighborhood block, if I'm in an apartment building, might be the floor that I'm on. These are rough estimates. A neighborhood is generally going to be made up of multiple neighborhood blocks, 60 to 6,000 households, roughly. Or one apartment building might be a neighborhood. A community is going to be made up of multiple neighborhoods, which are made up of multiple neighborhood blocks. Roughly 6,000 to 60,000 households is in a community. If you drive around LA City and you see the blue signs with names on it, those generally denote the neighborhood or the community that you're driving into. If you go on nextdoor.com and search, put in your address, a lot of the people who've lived there for a long time have built out their neighborhoods so that you can get an idea of what neighborhood you actually live in. When I say get to know your neighbors, get to know the ones you can trust, your immediate neighbors. It's not just about the disaster, but these might be friends. It used to be when someone new moved into a neighborhood, the neighbors would come say hello, give them casserole, introduce themselves. That doesn't happen anymore. Generally speaking, we don't talk to our neighbors anymore. You shouldn't get to know your neighbor after the earthquake happens. But if you get to know your neighbors, you get to know who you can trust. You can also get to know who you can't trust. Not every neighborhood is going to be, the idyllic. Everyone is trustworthy, honest, and great people. There will be people who may be problematic. A senior lead officer said that 10% of any population does not belong there. And for whatever, might not be a dangerous person, might not be a criminal, just doesn't blend into the neighborhood, that you don't get along with them. But it doesn't mean that it's a bad person. But as you get to know your neighbors, you figure out who you can trust, you can figure out who you can share things with, who has your contact information, who knows your kids. If you can't get home and your kids are there, and you can call your neighbor, or if you're out of town or going on vacation, let your neighbors know, because, hey, I know you're in Paris right now, but there's some lights on in your home. Are you expecting anybody over there? Is someone checking in on your cats? Or is someone breaking into your place because you posted all your vacation photos on Facebook and let everybody know you're going to be out of town for a month? No household can be prepared enough for every need. You can't anticipate it. It's simply not practical. As well as you prepare for, as well as you plan, you're going to miss something. It's simply statistics. So in the event of a disaster, if everyone is prepared and everyone knows that everyone is prepared, you can share. You have a lot of beans, but you don't have a lot of rice. Your neighbor has a lot of rice, but not a lot of beans. You've been eating beans for a week. They've been eating rice for a week. Maybe you can trade. You have chicken, they have beef, and someone else has pork. Also realize that not everybody may have a barbecue, but your gas is out, your power's out, your water doesn't, it's not safe to drink your water. Somebody has a barbecue, they can cook multiple meals instead of just cooking for one person or one family. Generator, probably don't want to be running it all the time, but you can charge multiple phones, multiple batteries while the generator is running. And if you have a freezer full of freeze-dried cans, oftentimes hold between 7 and 20 servings. As soon as you open it, it's going to start to degrade. So one can, especially if it's maybe two of you, you might want to share some of that with your neighbors and get some more stuff so that you don't let that food go to waste. Again, talk to your neighbors. Start talking about, what are we going to do during an earthquake? This is how I've planned. This is how we're preparing. What are you doing? They might not have thought about it, and now you're getting them to think about it. And they might have thought about it, and they might have a lot of ideas that you didn't think about. Sharing information, but also knowing what's going to go bad. And if you don't want it to go bad, sharing it with your neighbors is not a bad idea. Just, of course, be selective about who you're sharing it with. I work in IT. I do a lot of other things. I am not the handiest person in terms of construction capabilities, and I'm a little scared of electricity. But I'm also an EMT. Um, I might be able to help people. I might have neighbors who are electricians, carpenters, plumbers. I might need a plumber. I noticed that my neighbor's hose is pouring out water. I wish I was a plumber. I would go fix that for them. If that doesn't get taken care of, that might actually become my problem. So you see how getting to know your neighbors and making sure you have the ability to fix problems or know someone who does can actually be useful. Who has a generator? Here's an important one. Who's on oxygen? Who sleeps with a CPAP machine? Who has insulin dependent? Who has latchkey kids? Who's in a wheelchair? If when the earthquake happens and you know your neighbor has latchkey kids and they work late, do they want you to go check on their kids? They have an elderly parent with them who's in a wheelchair. Would they want you to go check on their neighbor? Would you want your neighbors to go check on your elderly parent or your latchkey kids? And again, this goes back to even before the disaster, watching out for each other. Hey, I have a package coming. Can you go make sure it's not sitting out on the front where the porch pirates are going to get it? Hey, I'm out of town for a week. Can you go feed my cats or not my dog? That kind of stuff builds better community. We'll do some training later on about radio communications, but again, we've been talking about needing radios, being able to communicate. Knowing how to talk on the radio is important, but there's other stuff. If everybody has these family radio service radios and you have a neighborhood channel and power goes out, there's a gunshot, there's an earthquake, fireworks are going off. You don't know if it's fireworks or someone's house just exploded. We heard about that yesterday. Um, Being able to communicate on the radio, this should be a trigger. Everyone turns on the radio, starts monitoring, everyone checks in. You start hearing people checking in, and everyone's fine. Earthquake just happened. You call in, you haven't heard anybody, but you're the first one to call out. Scabril 1, my family is safe, my home is undamaged. And then other people who've been monitoring start also calling in, and you hear everyone's fine, no damage, wasn't a big deal. But you start hearing, this is Cabril 1, family member fell down the stairs. I think she might have broken her leg. My front window shattered and I see cracks in my wall. Things got real. This is actually possibly pretty serious, and you might want to go check on your neighbors. Put up a help OK sign that's visible from the street so that as your neighbors are doing an assessment of your block, they know, oh, someone needs help here, or oh, this person's okay. We don't need to check on them. This is an example of what an OK sign looks like. Date and time. If this has not been updated in a while, you might want to go check on them, make sure they're still okay. Oh, that's a big giant red sign that's screaming for help. I should go check on them and see what they need. This comes from Map Your Neighborhood, or in LA City, we call it the Ready Your LA Neighborhood. It really focuses on that first golden hour after the earthquake or other disaster. The LA City Emergency Management Department manages this, but it is based on Map Your Neighborhood, which is also facilitated by the Red Cross. Either one works if you live in LA City, but Rylan is customized for LA City specifically. And you can have a city employee. Actually, I honestly don't even know the condition of this program right now. But check out readyla.org. You can reach out to us later and we can put you in touch with emergency management department and see about getting someone to come out and facilitate your training. This is something you want to get together with your block, your neighbors, and go through this program. Part of it is going to be to identify neighborhood gathering sites. These should be visible. You want your neighbors to go there, check in, make sure everyone's okay. They see people gathering out there, someplace where they're naturally going to want to go to. They can share information and organize a response. You're going to form teams of 2 to 3 to check on more vulnerable neighborhood members in the neighborhood. Again, the elderly, latchkey kids, people who with injuries or mobility challenged, people on oxygen. They're gonna go door to door, checking on the help signs and homes that don't have signs. Make sure no one's trapped or needs help. They will also turn off natural gas if they need to. If it's leaking, they can see it, smell it, hear it. The dial's spinning out of control, because if your neighbor's house catches fire and the fire department can't get there quickly, that fire is going to spread to your house. So this is about keeping it, in all reality, if I make sure my neighbors are safe, then I don't have to worry about their problem becoming my problem. But I also want to help my neighbors too. And they're going to, again, communicate using those FRS radios we talked about, the family radio service radios. They should be checking in the gathering site every 30 to 60 minutes. Something like this. Someone's front yard, signage is good. They'll also set up neighborhood care centers. So these should be inside, sheltered from the weather. Obviously, you want to make sure the building is safe. This is where elderly, injured, unattended minors can gather here and keep each other safe. Feel safe. Feel like the chaos is under control and there's somewhere safe for them to be, where they can be monitored and receive medical attention. The community emergency response team the training talks about do the greatest good for the greatest number of people. And this often gets left out in the shortest amount of time. After an earthquake, time matters. If someone's injured and bleeding out, they only have a certain amount of time before they lose too much blood and lose consciousness and then die. Someone's injured, you want to take care of them. If they need help, you want to get to them quickly and get them help. A lot of times when we do these drills, we see discussion for 30 minutes about the person who's squirting blood, about the best way to stop squirting blood. Well, that squirting blood stops on its own, but not in a good way. So don't over discuss. You want to come up with a plan, execute and commit to it. But if the plan is not going right, step back, reevaluate, come up with a new plan, and get it done quickly and efficiently. I talked about the Community Emergency Response Team, again, created by LA City almost 40 years ago now. And it is free training here. It is nationwide. It is worldwide. It is based on the training that firefighters get. You get the same training they do at the very basic level. They get a lot more advanced training than we do, but teaches disaster preparedness, how to understand a fire. How can I put out a fire? How can I make it so this fire doesn't grow? How can I use a fire extinguisher? How can I turn off my power, my water, my electrical, my gas? How to use a fire extinguisher and why and when to do these kinds of things. How can I do basic first aid? We've added in the instructors now teach hands-only CPR and stop the bleed as well. Light search and rescue operations. Look at a building, tells it's safe to enter. Be aware of the signs that are up. When you walk into Home Depot, what kind of dangers are in there? When you walk into a Costco, what kind of dangers are in there? When you're walking around inside of a building, where are the emergency exits? Where am I going to go? Think about this. If there's an earthquake and you're in a Costco, What are you going to do? There's a lot of stuff up there that's going to come crashing down on top of you. Come up with that plan as you're walking around. Where's the emergency exit? If I'm all the way inside the store and the power goes out, the lights are out, and the building is filled with dust and a lot of hazards, how am I getting out of there? Do I need to go all the way to the front, or are there exits that I might be passing as I'm walking around? How do I organize as a team? How do I help my team members when they've seen something that is horrific and they've never seen this before, and now they've been shaken to their core? What can I do to help them? Sir, unfortunately, there's a lot of bad things that happen around the world, in our communities, in small neighborhoods, even schools. What do we do when we're faced with that kind of stuff? How do we, if we're in the situation or we're nearby the situation, what do we deal with? It's all stuff they teach in this class. And they teach, take care of your family first and then help your neighbors. We don't bring a victim to an incident. We don't want to become a victim by doing something unsafe. It's a basic level of training to avoid making the situation worse. Think about it. Think about hazards. There's electrical lines down by a car. Do I know that the electrical lines are live or not? I have to assume that they're live, because I don't want to get stepped over into the pool of water that's surrounding a down power line and go down, and then someone has to rescue me, or worse. And for those of you who think I don't want to help my neighbors, or this is way too much, you can just take care of yourself and your family and don't help your neighbors. That's perfectly fine. If you can take care of yourself and your family, that means the fire department doesn't have to worry about you. And how do you organize the neighborhood and the community to be able to work together after the earthquake? This all helps you become a force multiplier for the fire department. And again, we offer trainings, we offer drills. We do this on a monthly basis. Get you out there and actually practicing the skills that you learned. Went over this. Ready. The neighborhood team program is something that we created as CERT coordinators to really be the answer to what's next for the CERT graduates. You've taken this training, what's next? And we've talked about the Ryland Map Your neighborhood organization. We talked about the CERT training. We add in neighborhood watch components for those that have active neighborhood watch. It's really grassroots. We build this from the neighborhood up, not requiring the city to be involved. We don't ask the city to make this happen. We talk to you and your neighbors and say, if you want to make this happen, how can we help you make this happen? And we're looking for leaders to step up and say, I want to do this in my neighborhood. We've really created a system here that standardizes a lot of the stuff. We've created step-by-step guides. We have orientation sessions for people who can't make that 17.5-hour commitment to take the CERT training. You're more than welcome. In fact, we encourage you to take the neighborhood team program trainings that we offer, because you don't have to be CERT trained to do this to help your neighbors, but we want you to eventually take it if you can. And we've standardized the drill templates. So when you attend our drills, you'll see the same thing over and over again. Repetition is key. Doing the same thing, fixing what you did wrong, and then doing it again and again until it becomes muscle memory is how you learn. And then we work with neighborhood councils to set up staging area kits that have everything you need for the first 3 hours of operation after the earthquake occurs. After the earthquake occurs, after the first hour where Ryland kicks in, you realize this is bigger, you're going to go to your neighborhood staging area. You're going to deploy out damage assessment teams. How bad is it? Where do I need resources? Find that out now, stabilize what you can, move on, and then come back with an incident response team that has more people, more tools, more resources, so you can take care of the problems and bring them to a conclusion. We talk about the components of the neighborhood team program and other trainings and really emphasize it. Our next, and I'll talk about our next training, but we do have one we're looking in November to do like a tabletop staging area operations, how you can operate and what you do and how the staging area tracks what's going on and really does resource management. In terms of where staging areas should go, a lot of people think schools or fire stations, public parks, those are actually really bad locations. Schools go into lockdowns, fire stations are not staffed during disasters usually. Public parks are way too open. Businesses, houses of worship, in a lot of cases, it's a purely residential neighborhood and it's in someone's backyard or side yard. But we need 24/7 access. So if you're not home, you agree that your neighbors can go to your place and set up a staging area and take care of each other. And let's face it, if they're staging at your home, and there's a fire there, they're going to put the fire out because they don't want their staging area to burn down. So a little bit of self-interest here as well. Everything they need for the first 3 hours of operation: dry erase board, maps, clipboards, pens, forms, radios, medical resupply. So when they burn through their own supplies, they can restock from there and keep helping their neighbors. We do the drills all over the city, out of the back of my truck or at a staging area. And again, we're trying to do these monthly. And it's repeatable. It's based on the same template. So every single time you get a new experience. You see things that you haven't done. There's opportunities to do the different roles so that you keep learning, because you want to be versatile. You want to be able to do whatever's needed of you. If you're great with radio, cool. But what if they need a scribe? What if they need a team leader? They don't need another radio operator. Can you step into the role that you're needed for? We do stick to odd number teams for a specific reason. Even number teams can be broken up. If you have a team of 4, that's 2 pairs. And if you want to, you can split those pairs up and it becomes problematic. We have a team leader with every team. The team leader's job is to make sure everyone gets home safely. That's that odd person. Scribe and radio operator, and then everyone else is a hands-on responder. We've simplified the incident command system so it makes sense. So you don't need to know, okay, is this operations? Is this planning? Is this a supervisor? Is it a section chief? Who's the PIO? What does the PIO do? It's team leader, radio operator, scribe, everyone else is a hands-on responder. And if you go to the fire department and say, I can help, this is what I can do, any of these positions can slot into an ICS, Incident Command System chart. So next steps for you: make a plan with your family, make a plan with your neighborhood, get a kit, first aid kit, get a go kit, get a under the bed kit, make a kit, practice, exit drills in the home, practice with your family. If you don't get my emails, sign up, join.ntp-la.org. Put out monthly emails twice a month, one at the beginning of the month, one more towards the middle, as a reminder of everything that's going on. And then start your neighborhood team. Reach out to us. We're more than happy to help you. If you haven't yet, take the CERT training. And then reach out to the emergency management department and set up a Ryland workshop for your block. And come to our drills. Our next one is going to be in the Sherman Oaks neighborhood. This is going to be their first one. That is not correct. It is not a damage assessment indoor drill. It is outdoors. It is going to be Saturday, October 26th, 9:30 to 12:30 p.m. The drill itself runs from 10 to 12. There's a half-hour debrief at the end. We do tell people to get there before 9:30 so they can sign in and people complain about us starting late, and that's because people come at like 10 o'clock and they can't find parking, and then they're there late. Um, the gathering site is gonna be at the corner of Ventura Canyon and Albers Street, in the Sherman Oaks neighborhood. And if you go to training.ntp-la.org, that's where all of our stuff is published, and you can see what trainings are coming up and scheduled. If you want to watch our past trainings, you can go to our YouTube channel. You can search for LAFD CERT or LAFD CERT coordinators, and you can see all the trainings that we have. Some of them have been edited and put up. Others are just under the live, and you can watch them live and fast forward through the boring parts. If you have any questions, you can reach out to us at info@ntp-la.org. I'm going to put my email address in the chat. Patrick@disasterprep.org. And you can visit our website, ntp-la.org. All right, any questions?
Great job. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And we hit 100 for a few seconds there. Unfortunately, we never exceeded that. And that just goes to show you, we had, again, 270 people, probably more than that, sign up for this. And less than 100 of you came and stayed. Unfortunately, that really goes to show you what the reality is here, is that unfortunately people are not taking this seriously. They are not prepared. They do not want to be prepared, and it is an uphill battle. Philip, you have your hand raised. Go ahead and ask your question.
Sure, thank you. Yes, what was your email again? You said it was disaster at, oh, excuse me, Patrick.
I put it in the chat. It's patrick@disasterprep.org. I'll do it again. Patrick.
Okay. I got, that's what I thought it was. Thank you. Also, for the neighborhood team, there's the 6 classes that we're supposed to take, and we're trying to figure out how to get access to those classes.
Email me.
At this
Help you.
email.
What's that?
At the Patrick@disasterprep.
Yeah.
Okay.
Patrick@disasterprep.org.
Okay.
And I realized I sent that to as a private message to somebody, so it's in the chat now. I can put you in touch with Chin is also on here. We can help you get scheduled that.
Thank you.
Chin, I think you were here. Are you still here, Chin?
I'm still here.
All right. You want to add anything here? Say anything?
You know, the only thing I'm going to grab onto, most everything here is pretty academic. The most critical thing in my mind and in my experience is that we all have to go out there and meet our neighbors. That is probably one of the most uphill battles I've ever seen. Aside from the apathy and sometimes hard, the hard thing that Patrick was talking about of getting people to simply show up, and probably the next thing or tied with that is getting people to know their neighbors. And as Patrick said, that is very, very critical. And let me tell you, any plan that you put together has to be done as a community. At the same time, I'll say don't be deterred by that. Work with the people you've got. If you've got 3 people in the neighborhood, you start there and then you continue to try to build from there. But you do need that community input. You need that community participation to make it work, because like many of the things you've seen here of communally sharing resources, using generators, other things like that, you need people. And like Patrick said earlier, which we all say, meeting your neighbors that morning, you're out of business. So really make that effort to say hi to your neighbor. You don't have to get to know them on the most intimate levels, but at least know them enough that you guys can come up with a plan. That's the only thing I want to say to you guys. And again, thank you guys for being here. And as I like to say at my teaching sessions, thank you for the privilege of your time, because you could be nearly anywhere else. And you guys are the 100 people of the 275 or whomever who signed up who actually made it here. So thank you.
Absolutely. Chin, did you have anything in the chat that you were responding to that we should bring up because not everybody can see the chat?
No, I don't think there was. I don't think there was too much going on in the chat. There were basic discussions about should you use pool water, and we talked about all of that. I don't see anything at least right now. But there are 13 new messages since I started talking. I'm just going to take a quick run through here. A lot of people are asking if they can get copies of the slide deck. If that's possible. And
Hey, Chin, can I just get in there?
Sally Thompson, the fabulous Sally Thompson from Battalion 10. You
Hey,
go.
I can say the best way to get to know your neighbors is to get a dog.
The interesting thing about that in my neighborhood, we have a lot of dog walkers, and they admit they don't know each other's names. They know that's Princess's humans or that's Fido's humans. That's kind of weird, but I don't, yeah, it's a great way to socialize, but also get to know the people, not just the dogs.
You got it. True
Agreed.
that.
And Patrick, one of our attendees, is asking about signing up for the October 26th exercise, which is taking place up in the Valley. How do they do that?
I'll put the link here, training.ntp-la.org. That'll have the links to the Eventbrite, and you can click on that and go there. Thankfully, Eventbrite had done something horrible where they made it events with free signups, limited 25 tickets. They have since revoked that, and now as of this month, our Eventbrites are back to normal, and so you can sign up. But if you bookmark training.ntp-la.org, all of our Eventbrites publish to that, so you can check that. You can also check the CERT calendar if you go to cert-la.com. That will also we publish our stuff there, as well as other coordinators from around LA City will publish their events and trainings there.
And Eventbrite was having some business problems, so keep an eye on whether they stay in business or not.
Well, hopefully now that they're allowing free events again, I really hope they stay because
yes,
yeah.
But they did fire a lot of people.
Well, hopefully. Okay.
And one thing I'm going to jump in and say, Maureen asked, are these exercises always in the Valley? No, they're not. They take place throughout the city. We've had them in San Pedro, West Adams, and you're kind of close to the west side. So we recently did one in Delray, which is relatively close to you. So I recommend staying on, of course, the mailing list, which is always sent out letting you know where the exercises are coming from, and keep an eye on that because we do have them close to the west side, and hopefully at some point we will have them directly in that Westwood area, which is Battalion 9. So come on up, help us out, and we can bring those trainings right to you. Back to you, Patrick.
Thanks, Chin. It is almost 9 o'clock, and I do like to end these on time. So do we have any last minute questions? Anything else? Then thank you so much for coming. Let your neighbors know what they missed. Again, if you're interested in being a team leader, reach out to me. Let's get something going in your neighborhood. We'll bring the trainings to you. We'll bring the drills to you. We'll help you. We'll hold your hands. This is so important that we get this done now, because what if the people who think that a bunch of small quakes means that the big one is coming are right? Then we need to get prepared sooner than later. Worst thing that we can do is go into this big one being in our current situation, which is not prepared enough. Thank you, everyone. Have a good night.
Thanks, Patrick. Mike.